Here in the backwoods of Nova Scotia, spring is still trying to get started, but it isn't having much luck. We might get a few days of warm sunshine and even rain, and the snow entirely vanishes, only to be followed by several days of snowstorms when it entirely returns. And after the last set of storms 2 weeks ago, the snow decided to settle in for a while, and a winterscape resumed over the forest. Though the days tended to be only a little below freezing, and occasionally peaking just over it. But all in all, especially here in the shadows of the forest, it still felt like winter. But even in the depths of winter, there is great beauty, and things to do, and wildlife to see. There are pileated woodpeckers, horned and barn owls, hawks and blue jays, and on the land, ermine, bobcats, coyotes, and even the snowshoe hare, who, when conditions are right, is virtually invisible. And of all the creatures of forests and meadows, one of the more endearing that we see summer and winter, I think, is the black cap chickadee. Now it may be that I am beginning to reach this conclusion because the flock that live locally have come to recognize me, at times even gathering around me when I go for a walk in the forest, and settling at ease upon my hand if I offer them food. But the simple truth is, they are lovely and endearing little birds. And though they have numerous predators in nature, somehow they manage to be naturally tame, and many persons who spend time with them find that soon they are quite willing to come very close. I will tell you, there is no feeling so warm, so beautiful, as that which comes upon me when I observe one of these gentle creatures landing upon a willow branch only inches from my shoulder or settling on my open palm. To me, the chickadee is a great wonder of nature. Little bundles of energy, they are perpetually in motion, and so they can be very challenging to film, even though they're not shy and are quite willing to hang around. But by the time one has swung a camera in their direction, focused and composed, often the little birds have moved on, which makes still photography awfully handy when observing them. Yet for all that energy, they weigh less than half an ounce. And though they live in the far north, they do not migrate come winter, yet manage to withstand some of the coldest, harshest conditions on Earth, living in deep boreal biomes as far north as upper Alaska, terrain that has bested many capable humans. Speaking of rugged North Country, as spring is beginning to show its first marks, I decided to go out today and combine filming of black cap chickadees with a little foraging. It was a productive day. I found medicinal red-belted polypores, these Peptoporus betulina, which are edible when young and tender, and a nice patch of wild wintergreen, which I'll turn into tea later on when we're back at the cottage and it's time to settle down by the fire. Wintergreen, also known as the teaberry, grows close to the ground, though wintergreen oil is abundant in the north, also being found in new spring birch twigs. It's as if when the air is yet cold but things are melting, like you see in this image, the land itself resists the changing of the seasons by producing a minty oil as cool as ice. Chickadees are remarkably amiable birds, widely considered adorable for their little round bodies and oversized heads, along with their mask-like faces. In fact, they make me think of airborne raccoons, and a group of chickadees is sometimes referred to as a banditry. And you know, despite their small and humble appearance, this is a very successful bird species. Their territory spans all the way from the maritime provinces of Canada down to the northern reaches of the continental USA, right through to the American Pacific Northwest and Western Canada, and all the way up through the Yukon territory and into Alaska. In the many years that I spent living in the Alaskan bush, chickadees were a frequent and beloved sight, and even in the depths of the extraordinarily long winters, they always reminded me that spring was eventually going to come. And seeing them now in the backwoods of the mountain where I live in Nova Scotia, well, it makes me feel that anywhere I go is going to be home. They have remarkable flight capabilities and beat their wings at 27 to 30 times per second, or roughly half the speed of a hummingbird. Here, I was able to catch this black-capped chickadee, one of a flock that frequently visits me when I walk in the woods, at 60 frames per second, just as it launched in my direction from a twig. From this vantage, the characteristic of its flight reminds me of the wing beats of a moth, though of course the chickadee is much faster and more coordinated. At the observatory, I now have 2 feeders set out. One is a covered wooden one that I typically fill with peanuts or black oil seeds. The other is a small hanging cup that often gets the same seeds or sometimes smaller, finer little grains. The cups swing very freely and the blue jays seem to like it less. So it's there so the chickadees can get their fair chance to eat. Shortly after filling the feeders, the black caps showed up. Busier than beavers, the observatory was suddenly filled with the rampant activities of a dozen agile little birds. They prefer to feed at the cup, knowing that the blue jays prefer the heavier and more stable covered feeder. And as they forage through the cup, when they encounter the little grains, they gobble them up right there, but whenever one manages to grab one of the black-capped sunflower seeds that I've mixed into the grain, they will fly off to eat it at a sequestered little niche, or go and cache it on one of the boughs of the trees, typically the underside. Like little perpetual motion machines, they never stop, and keeping the camera composed and focused on them is a daunting challenge. While spring is slowly working its way toward warmer days, this particular day was frigid, and the clear sky will bring a much colder night. I'm amazed at how well these tiny birds can ride out these conditions. They do this by going into a torpor, lowering their body temperature by as much as 12 degrees Celsius through the night, thereby needing less energy to survive the cold evenings. And while that blue jay, a corvid, observes the chickadees waiting for his chance to steal some of that grain that they are enjoying, is an amazingly intelligent bird like all corvids. Going into a torpor at will is not a trick he can perform, but he can land on that precarious cup, successfully stealing some of the black-capped chickadee's grain for himself. Perhaps ticking off a nearby red squirrel who has for some reason so far resisted the temptation to get into the bird's feed at all. And speaking of corvids, here are the tracks of a raven who is hopping through the area. So far, they've shown no interest in any of the feed that I've set out, unsurprising since I know them to enjoy meat as often as they can get it. But I enjoy the company of these amazingly intelligent birds as well, and perhaps one of these days soon, we'll cover them too. Thank you for watching. The Naturalist program is committed to the reliable coverage of all matter of topics relating to natural science, from ecology and conservation to the nature of the universe beyond our Earth, and making that information practical with solid advice on living well with the natural world. If you appreciate the program, please take a moment to subscribe. Subscribing costs nothing and never will, but it sure helps a lot.